So I've taken some time away from doing interviews here on the Broadcasters Podcast. There's been so much to talk about. And partly what I've been talking about on the program, especially over the summer, is the issues that came across in the light of, systemic and racial injustices we've talked about here on the program. And they're prominent. There's definitive things that can be addressed. We can all agree with that. And we've talked about it in the areas of journalism, music, movies, TV, and radio, all that we talk about here on the program. Well, I got introduced to someone who is here to go and help give a fresh and an expert perspective on everything that comes to diversity, equity, inclusion in the light of the issues that the Black Lives Matter movement have brought in front of us and other issues, because there's always been a social culture that has always been very active and very vocal and things that should be done in order to create those areas of diversity, equity, inclusion to be much more prominent in the limelight. And of course, I've always had the distinguishing factors about if it's, just because a company or a talent or a content creator needs to be allowed access to work somewhere based on checking all the boxes or based on merit and performance. So I want to talk about that with my guest. He's a Black media producer, artist, entrepreneur, and owner of APRT Media. I'm here with Muyinza Kasirye. Muyinza, thanks for being on with us.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
So you run a media production company that does photography and videography primarily in the entertainment space, working coast to coast between LA, New York City, and Boston. Now, I want to read from your website real quick. So it reads, quote, "What's become crucial for any artist or brand at any level in 2020 is consistency. Our goal is to be able to not only write a song, do a photo shoot, or produce a video with you, but to create a story and in turn an audience for what you do. With so much noise in the media landscape," which there really is a lot of noise from the signal. In order for an artist or brand to carve out space, it's important that their fans and or prospective fans be hearing and seeing them with some sort of consistency. Nowadays, it's almost a must for an artist or brand to give fans a content-driven narrative to follow. So talk to me about your work with APRT and the accomplishments your team has made. Let people know what you've actually done that we might have actually seen or heard about.
Yes. So we have essentially what we do is we help. I am one of the people that was very early to jump onto social media and the digital media space as a very serious form of being able to advertise and tell story and grow your brand. And so essentially what we do is we find, and how I started was I would find just brands that had a very visually outdated presentation, and we revamp it to the design language and kind of the visual language of today, which is very difficult because of the algorithm to be able to work your way around. So and then as far as things that you might have known, probably our most recent big project was we got one of my longtime collaborators a record deal with US Republic, and just this past summer he released his first major single, Mr. Leo the Kind, with the record Ain't Nobody Gonna Touch You, or Judge You, sorry, Ain't Nobody Gonna Judge You. That is the big push that we're making right now, along with a couple of other projects that we're working on.
And just to go and delve into that, when you look at how you have to go and work through social media and just through other routes, obviously streaming is what you're really trying to get the most out of to try to get that direction. I mean, it's interesting, the dynamic where radio doesn't support anybody unless it's something absolutely bona fide and established. There's no room for local radio to go and even have artists that have that time like they used to do back in the day, where you'd have some local love. None of that's even offered. So there's that point. Nothing is regional. It has to be from a national or global perspective. Get the song put up on Spotify or somewhere else, get the YouTube video out there or put it on Facebook or wherever, and find a way to get people to go ahead and attach to it and then just come into the space. And then TikTok, of course, Instagram Reels. We're seeing that if you can find somebody to even choreograph a dance to it in 15 or 60 seconds, same thing. So as you've been working on this, talk to me what you've been doing with Leo the Kind and trying to get that song out there and noticed.
Actually, exactly that. So what we've found is that due to COVID and the way that it has completely changed how we do everything as human beings, and particularly in the business space, what we found is being able, being a smaller company and being able to pivot has been one of our biggest assets, because we had set up, the in conjunction with the label, we had tour and all of these things that we were working on that we thought we were going to have to be able to grow and push these records. That evaporated overnight. And so what we've been doing is finding alternative ways to essentially bring that performance and interaction and engagement to fans in a different way than simply going to a show. So finding different ways to reinterpret songs, finding different ways to get content out there that just keeps people looking, and also finding essentially a whole nother, really a new market that we didn't realize could be a thing, which is creating these live shows for artists to put in place of an actual concert. So we've been doing any number of those types of things, as well as ensuring the fact that because everybody's home, that we're also engaging as we're putting out that content.
The other thing too, I also noticed is that the song is labeled alternative indie, which there is a lot of I kind of feel a lot of music in terms of rap and all, where if it has a certain sound where it's not so much of a trap beat, if it's something that's much more of a different sound to it being done in the studio, it's a genre that doesn't get enough attention. And I still feel like alternative and indie, in just in that respect, it's so much in the underground right now. Like the attention to get. Talk to me about where the artists decide, where Leo the Kind in this respect, about the direction of where you want to go and put records on. And obviously, being from Boston, not necessarily being said where I've seen. I don't know. It's like I'm just looking where when you have an artist like this and you bring him on board, to find his lane, if you will. Like, where's the place where you can go, where you can really market that artist and get them in in front of the right people.
Right. And that's actually the task. So with a lot of, particularly alternative, there are a lot of people there's a way that particularly music has been categorized.
And the problem is, and just to make a point, alternative, my thing is right now, that was what rock was. That's what grunge and all that what happened up until the 2000s. Mid 2000s, the music just went away. Whatever was guitar driven or instrumental driven is gone. Now it's digital. And I feel like there's not a real set identity, because some pop stars can actually lend themselves into the same respect, but there's not much of that at all. So it's really it's kind of just a hodgepodge, I feel.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of the thing. It was categorized, creativity was categorized by the business, but people aren't like that. People just want things that sound good and feel good and put them in the mood that they want to be in when they're engaging with whatever it may be, a movie, a video, a song, a picture, whatever it may be. So it's not so much about, it's really getting to the people and trying to figure out where those people actually are, because it's kind of like people have been put into these pots that they don't necessarily fit in or necessarily want to be in. So you just have to find essentially really open-minded people. That's what we've really generally been trying to find, are just open-minded individuals to a diverse level of creativity, which Leo provides. So that's really been the main issue. It's just trying to find those individuals that don't care, that aren't genre driven, that just want good music.
Now, the way you mentioned that, the business determines the labels. So earlier this year, because of the real spotlight being given on diversity, equity, inclusion by the Black Lives Matter movement, the record labels started deciding to go and drop the urban name from the artist repertoires, from the departments. The Grammys have
Right.
also kind of changed things up about using the urban contemporary format. That was a name that was labeled by Frankie Crocker, WBLS fame back in the 1970s. But the thing is, again, it's taking away. What do you think about that kind of labeling when it's trying to just, it's a labeling to try to go ahead and at least create a sense of what the music is? Because I always thought urban contemporary was a pretty well used name. I mean, it might not represent everybody, but I feel like
Yeah.
it did serve a purpose.
It did, but the purpose was misused. So the urban is generally, well, okay, because urban isn't really anything. Like urban by definition isn't, it's a made up
What was an idea of
thing
the
that
music of the
was,
streets? So if a station wanted to play what was called urban contemporary, Frankie Crocker would play disco. He would play some rock songs that just had like a soulful blues type groove to it. Or he would play music
right.
that, might have been from black artists or Hispanic artists or even white artists. It didn't really make a difference. It was a diverse format. But the problem is that corporatization has changed all that.
Yeah. So what does urban mean to you?
Urban always meant because if I listen to rap music, there are artists that I know of that are black, Hispanic, white, or Asian or what have you. It doesn't make a difference
Yeah.
what it is. But urban's always been, well, I mean, when I was growing up, all those stations were black. And then the
Right.
Hispanics, any Hispanic type format of stations that would also encompass all together. We used to have a format was called rhythm crossover, and
Yeah.
that's a format that I miss because this is where it comes down to diversity. Rhythm crossover was what brought certain songs and certain artists to the limelight. I mean, that's how you got the mainstream. Rhythm crossover created Dr. Dre. It created, say like House of Pain or Heavy D and the Boys or whatever. I mean, or just the freestyle artists like, Cover Girls or Stevie B. Like that's the kind of thing we had. And Two Live Crew would be brought into the mainstream because of that too. It was those kind of things where music was just more loud and I thought it was just more raw. I just think that because there's so many, and this is where deregulation comes into play. When companies get swallowed up by other companies, and you only have four major record publishers that own almost all the record labels, who's going to get in the door? So indie only has so much room to get in.
Yeah. So the problem, okay, well, the actual issue with urban is actually part of what you said. So urban is essentially black music. That is essentially what it became defined as,
Yeah.
is urban music. But but black music is not just black music isn't a thing. Like
No,
black
because
music,
black artists can
well, so
also
this
be
is
in a
the thing.
number of different genres. Absolutely.
Yes, and so that therein lies the issue, is that what started to happen almost immediately was any type of music that we created, regardless of what it was just relegated to urban. So someone can make a pop record like a Tyler the Creator, but it's put into urban because he's a black artist. That's where it became and has become an issue, is that music that we make, even outside of the genre, or not even a genre, just any music we make is just relegated to urban when we make a diversified collection of music that exists in all genres.
And this
And
is my fight.
that's the issue with it.
And this is my fight with corporate.
Yeah.
Muyinza, this is my fight with corporate because of the fact that I've hampered this. Oh my God, I have thumped on this for years. Did you know the American Top 40, that countdown that Casey Kasem used to host back in the 70s and 80s? I don't know if you grew up ever hearing about that. The Billboard charts, the Hot 100, that is still listed today.
Yeah.
When you heard mainstream radio, top 40 radio, the top 40 songs were what's on the Hot 100. And you see what's in the Hot 100. I think it's a very good makeup and representation of all artists across the board. I mean, I can look across the board, and I
Yes.
think it works, but that was what they used to play. And then somewhere in 1991, because there were a lot of issues, some of the music was getting a lot more raunchier, a lot more edgier, right? It wasn't so much soul music. You were not hearing soul music from the Dramatics or James Brown or things like that, or Aretha Franklin, because the music was changing. New wave, just 80s, so much change of music. And then the 90s was just getting so diverse We had
Mm,
so many different feels to it, from dance to, just to whatever. And then we get to the
right.
point of where, American Top 40 was the standard. They would play what the Billboard chart was. Whatever happened, because of the music that was being changed, there was an offense to it. There was a hesitation. And
Mm,
so we're going to make mainstream music pop, and that's it. Pop used to be a genre within mainstream music. Now it's
right.
just a watered down, homogenized thing. So anybody to be able to make themselves get up there, it's harder for somebody to cross over into that part.
Yes, but it is quantifiably more difficult for a black artist. Like that's really what it comes down to. I mean, again, Tyler the Creator said it best at the last Grammys. His album he won an album for Urban Album of the Year. His album was not an urban, it was not categorized correctly at all.
He really
But
wasn't a genre.
it was something completely different than what it was categorized as, and that's really what we're saying, is just that we just want the same level of diversity in how our music is looked at as everyone else. That's really just why the urban title it became antiquated, because we outgrew it. Essentially, we outgrew that title, um, from almost the moment that it happened, because the music that we make is way more diverse than just one, block of thing, and that's really the issue.
Let's go into
And
questions real
really,
quick. I mean,
yeah.
so business2community.com recently wrote, now more than ever, businesses of all sizes are investing time and energy into diversity, equity, and inclusion programs and denouncing racism, and many are paving the way for deeper acceptance and change. Businesses who embrace diversity and inclusion as part of their corporate culture will often create smart business strategies, boost their financial performance, outperform less diverse peers on profitability, and make their employees feel valued and included. Two-thirds of job seekers consider workplace diversity an important factor when considering employment opportunities, and consumers are paying attention to diversity in communications too. So I want to know what your overall take is, how you see DEI in the media in terms of the industry, people going into the space and getting to work in the media. Do you see real change right now happening in your view, or are companies just pumping out a lot of performative allyship?
It's performative, a lot of performative.
I agree.
Because the thing is that it's, in order to create the real change, real things need to happen. Like, and so it's fine to say a lot of things, and there's a lot of symbolic things that are being done, but there isn't real change, and the real change has to happen in the power structure. The real change has to happen in, because, for instance, I myself, as a um, so you just said two-thirds of people consider work diversity in their workplace important. So two-thirds of those people could be HR people, and two-thirds of
Mhm.
those people might see my resume come across the desk, or my deck come across the desk, and they don't, they see my name, which is the name that they don't know, and they pick another one, and statistically that does happen. So it's kind of the structurally it needs to change. It needs to, the changing the urban and getting rid of the black voice actors, or getting rid of voice actors that aren't black, voicing black actors. Like, we don't really care about that. We care about being able to have real power and being able to create real opportunity for ourselves, and for other black people. And we are either not put in those positions often, and or uh, don't receive the same level of opportunity as our white counterparts. Um,
But now here's the
and
thing,
that's
Weens.
speaking from
Instead of
experience.
fighting against the establishment to get a seat on the table,
Yeah.
here's my thing. This is where I look at
Mm,
Robert Johnson, who created BET. I look at Byron
yeah.
Allen now with Entertainment Studios. And the things they've
Right.
been able to do. I mean, okay, goddamn, Byron Allen just bought Weather Channel. He's been making movies now and bankrolling them, and he's doing really well. Like, just, I see where instead of having to try to go and just fight against, we already have the digital disruption, which has already messed up the mainstream establishment, the traditional establishment. I would rather not go ahead and go into that part and try to conform, because then what happens is, this is where I think people don't understand, because we might want to encourage DEI. The problem is that going to still be the intent of that person once they get in the door? Because I think it changes once they get in the door, because they'll see how things are, and they might just abandon what happens after the fact, or if they don't, they're at least trying to like play a little bit of happy talk. I believe. I just think taking it upon ourselves and finding the entrepreneurs that are going to build their own companies, say, well, you know what, fuck this, I'll do it on my own.
Yeah. Well, I do agree with that, but I do agree with that. And I actually am a believer of that, but I'm telling you, as someone on the ground, it is an absolutely exhausting fight. For instance, to give you, I work with and came up with several, I have several white counterparts. Like I have several white friends that do the exact same thing that I do.
Mm-hmm.
And in our experience doing what we do, there are key things that make it easier for them. As far as connections, relationships, and just the general, there is a tangible, people want to help themselves realistically. And so the reason why, even though, yes, build your own thing, what it takes to do that as a Black person and what you're up against is insane. And it is exhausting, because you have to not only be Black, you also have to do the thing that you do. Whereas you just get to do the thing you do. So all of my white counterparts, they only do this job. I am also watching myself get murdered on TV every other week. I am also dealing with banks that, treat me terribly or won't give me loans, or, I deal with extra. I deal with more. It's more arduous.
But I'll tell you what, I'm going to tell you, I see some of the artists that have come in the 90s and what they've come in to be able to do. Russell Simmons, or say a Jay-Z or a Beyonce, or P. Diddy, or Diddy. Yeah. And I'm just saying to myself, there are those, or Kanye, they have made it. And they do, yeah. But they follow the beat of their own drum. I don't think they're being manipulated too much. I think they absolutely are doing it on their own. And yes. I mean, I respect the fuck out of seeing when people were able to go ahead and buck the system. That's my whole thing. I don't yes. I want diversity, equity, inclusion. I'm a person of merit and performance, but then also I want, it's because that's the money that's being used, like you said, performative allyship. I made that point, and I can't stand that shit. I can't stand it, because the money's being put out to throw as if the community, the Black community, is a victim, and to a point. But then again, there are people like you. You don't want to be victims. You want to don't worry about head of the table or getting in to go ahead and be a part. You're going to make your own thing, and fuck them for not putting you in.
Yes, but one thing
a chip on the shoulder, man.
To do, I agree, but there's one thing that you, as a white person, have to understand. I am an aberration. Jay-Z is an aberration. Kanye West is an aberration. For every one Kanye West, there are 100, other white people that are able to do those same things at a much lower level of effort, due to the fact that, and even if you look at some of the stories of the individuals that made it, what they had to do to make it is horrible. Jay-Z had to sell drugs for years to create the capital to be able to become the person that he became.
Shouldn't have had to do that. Correct.
Exactly. And that is the issue. That's the issue. Why do we have to do these other things? Because opportunity is not given to us in an equitable fashion, which is why, for instance, I myself had to also start another business to be able to start this business. I had to create the capital. I had to create the relationships. I had to create all my opportunity. I saw friends around me that were white that did not have to do those things, because historically they have a much different familial history than I do, due to the fact that hundreds of years ago, they were not in the same bondage as my people. And so therein lies the issue, is that yes, you can make it. It's possible. It's like hitting the lottery. Yeah, you can hit the lottery, but how many tickets did it take you? Because for a lot of us, it takes it's unbelievable what it
But
takes. And
you
I'm
know what?
speaking from first person.
I'll say this too. You've heard of the guy Rich Dad Poor Dad, Guy Kiyosaki?
Hmm.
Okay. One of the things about him, and it really does make the sense. I don't think it's so much about. By the way, and for the record, I'm Cuban American. I'm a
Oh,
minority,
okay,
much
gotcha.
like anybody else. So just for the record, I mean,
Gotcha.
I could tan pretty good. I'm just saying.
Okay.
But
Okay.
you didn't know, and that's okay.
Okay, that's fair.
The other thing I was going to say is, you know, it's not so much where it's a target of I think it's just the makeup of somebody. It's the
Yeah.
status, and it's those who are not rich are the ones that are always going to be, it's going to be discouraged. That's what it comes down to. Is the money,
With
the establishment
so
money, the institutional money, right? It
mhm,
doesn't go down to the right people, and it's not
absolutely.
fair for
Yes,
anybody, as a matter of fact. And that's why I come
it
across.
is.
I don't think it's just directed towards a particular group. Everybody's fucked, man. All of us.
Yeah, everybody's fucked. Black people are fucked the worst and the hardest and the longest. And when things get better, it gets better for us last. Like
Okay.
if you really look at it, if you look at it statistically, when it's been bad for us the longest, it when it is bad, it is the worst for us. When it gets bad, it gets bad for us first. When it gets better for us last. That is, all those things are statistical things, right? So yes, I do agree. As someone that is literally living that bootstraps, pick it up, do the even I myself recognize how immensely lucky and blessed, and so many things that happened by chance that had they not happened, I would not be here. I was very blessed to be one of the very, very few Africans born to two people with degrees. That put me hundreds of years ahead of even my own people in that regard, right? So um, I understand, and I do believe, yes, you can pull yourself up, you can, but we also have to recognize the reality of what we as Black people are up against and what we've been through, and the reality of the fact that it is still an anomaly for us to reach a certain level of success. There is a surprise when I still walk into restaurants that are above a certain threshold. It is often that I am in a store that is, again, maybe a little higher price, and I'm asked if I work there. That happens very, very often when I'm in nice places. So
But there
clearly,
is a thing where the work you did. I mean, I've read from your story. So you came from Uganda to Toronto, relocated to
mhm,
Boston. Little money, little privileges, but you
yes,
did it.
I did,
You
but I
and you know
almost
what?
killed myself in the process.
But do you believe
I
that?
almost killed
But the other
myself
thing
in the
too is that
process.
you also don't want anybody to have a free lunch. You want somebody to have. They need to put the work in as well.
Yes, I absolutely agree. But I absolutely agree. You should do the work. You have to. But we also have to recognize that in order to, like, in order for anyone to get anywhere, you have to have something. Like, I got lucky in that I had something. I had no resources. I had almost no money. I had
Yeah.
almost no information, but I had certain key things. I had ability to get information. I had the knowledge of how the white system works. My parents went to school, so they knew, like, okay, if you get a degree, if you do this, they knew enough about finances and the financial system to kind of help me, guide me, get me through. So I had a little bit of a basis. Even though it was very little, I had a little bit of a basis. But I can tell you that a lot of the kids that I grew up around in Dorchester, a lot of those Black kids, they have nothing. They have no information. They have no base. Their family situation is a mess. Their households are a mess. A lot of them don't understand what college is. A lot of them don't understand the importance of information, education. They don't understand the financial system. they don't have anything to build off of. And I would actually say that that is even an issue for most people in America, is that it's hard to build something off of nothing. And for us, we're just building off of the least.
Now, Muyinza, let me put it like this too, because also
Yeah.
what people don't also, because also in the corporate sense, they don't understand. They just see a color and that's it. I can understand that part. But in my perspective, I'm in South Florida, and I notice, first of all, when I look at you, they talk about the phrase African American. You're legitimately African American. You came from Africa and you have come in as American now. But everybody else that's in America that is given that label, that's not the case. And in the same case for a lot of black people in my area, we have Haitian, Jamaican, Bahamian, Trinidadian, Cuban. Believe it or not, we have here Cuban. We have Cubans came in that were black and Chinese and and just whatever you want, melting pot. It was wonderful. I never got to be, but I always wish I could always be. I never got to go visit where my parents came from, and it's unfortunate. But the thing is, there are different diversities of all, and I just see for myself when I see people coming from other countries, that's more the plight, as so much not so much from the color of the skin, it's the upbringing, because coming into not being born American and coming in here and making it on your own. Those kind of stories, that should be uplifting people up. And I think, when we always talk about Americans, we kind of, we're a little bit lazy overall and don't want to put in the effort.
Yes, also, but what does that say that I, as an immigrant, can come here? I, as a black immigrant, can come here and be more successful than
pretty damn smart.
My own black people here, though. Like myself as someone, I was educated outside of the country. I came from a country that would seemingly with actually less resources. I came from a country with less resources, but then am more successful than the people here, right? So that even goes to say that systemically here, that exemplifies the issue, because I can say that all of the reasons why I'm successful are because I was not thwarted, or I was thwarted. Actually, let me actually say this. So I moved to America when I was 13. Mm-hmm. So all of the things that I have come to find thwart the success of Black people didn't start affecting me here until I was 13. And having lived a life where I don't deal with those things and where I do deal with those things, I can say that there is, I can say that there is definitely a lot of things that happen to the Black American mentality as far as how you're treated and the things that you're fed about yourself that definitely change the way that you move and what you think you can even achieve here.
I agree. Because the discouragement is disgraceful.
Yeah. So when I came in here, I looked at it as like, okay, I can do anything. Mm-hmm. Right. And so I just tried. And again, I had a basis of information to springboard off of. And I had always been in great public school systems. I've been very lucky in that regard. The school system in Uganda is very, very arduous. So when I came here, it was not very difficult for me to perform well in school, which is really the thing that saved me, because I just went from scholarship to scholarship to scholarship. But I found that because we moved here and we moved to a rough Black neighborhood in Boston, Dorchester. And what I saw there blew my mind, because I was years ahead of the kids that went to Dorchester Public School, which are the kids that became, my neighborhood friends. I was years ahead of them.
Yeah.
Emotionally, mentally, intellectually, all of these ways, because of what they had been fed about who they are and the horrible circumstances of the hoods of America are oppressive to any mind to an unbelievable level. And so all I saw were just hopeless versions of myself that didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And that's what the hood is, and that is a hangover from slavery, from bringing us here. They didn't give us any information, they didn't give us resources, and it's still pervasive. You can still see it, and so and that's really the thing. It's just that it's just the level to which it is difficult for anyone is true. I 100% believe that. It's difficult. Everyone should have to do what they have to do as much work as you can. However, if you are Black, it feels and statistically shows you every day how difficult that is. And that's the part that is tiring. That's the part that's exhausting. And that's the part that, quite honestly, I've seen keeps a lot of us from reaching our true potential.
And that's where I think there's a
And
distinguishing factor is that, the word racism gets thrown out a lot, but I really feel like when I look at systemic and it's institutional, it's oppression more
yeah,
than it would be racism eyes. I think it's just oppression of a group of people.
yeah,
And obviously there are going to be some people that absolutely color is a determining factor. I
right.
don't doubt that, but I'll tell you, I wish you were out there talking to a lot of young Black people and letting them know, look at what happened to me. Like, you don't have to feel hopeless. So it's like, and it doesn't have
Yeah.
to be something that has to be heard in church. It's like, I love the way you talk here. Talk about another route, a pipeline of you to be successful. You should be inspirational speaker.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's actually what, that's what I'm working on, is to show that there are other ways to do this,
Write a
because
book,
quite
man.
honestly,
Write a
the
book,
the
please. You should. You got a great
I
story. I
no,
mean,
I
there's so
agree.
much to be said.
Right. Well, I mean, the thing is yes, it does help for them to see me, for them to hear, for them to see that it's possible. But at the same time, there does need to be systemic changes to ensure that it shouldn't be this difficult. Like I shouldn't have had to go through what I went through to be as successful as I
No,
am,
you shouldn't have.
because
But
you know what I mean?
what it is, Weeza, is separating the signal from the noise. So much fucking noise going on. Mainstream media,
Yeah,
establishment, those people that are up at the top of buildings, say for any major cable or major broadcast network or any digital
yeah,
entity that's out, or any establishment traditional broadcast entity, music
right,
labels, movie studios across the board. That's what it is. That's why we have
right,
rehashing and retooling of old content, because people will not let the news stories come to the door, because there's lots of stories to be told. And God forbid those people make money, because then those people are left out. It's like
right.
that's what they want. It's a power and control grab. It is stupid. Now, let me get back to business to community, the article I talked about before. They also wrote
Hmm.
all the way back from I Like to Buy the World of Coke. That was a 1970 or 71 campaign that Coke did, which was all about diversity, equity, inclusion. And, from the commercial to today, you can clearly see stand-on examples of diversity expressed in advertising. Savvy marketers are also demonstrating brand diversity in social campaigns. Once you've established an inclusive culture that values diversity and equity, public relations can play a critical role in communicating your culture and beliefs. What do you say about that?
I absolutely agree with that. Well, I agree with that to a degree. I
Uh-huh.
think I actually think that's the way. I think everything needs to look how it actually is. And right now, for a long time, it hasn't looked how it actually is.
Yeah.
Representation is easily one of the most important aspects that has been missing as far as the media. And I think that is also part of systemically the issues that we deal with, because by not seeing, by everyone not seeing themselves, they don't believe in what they can achieve to the full extent that they can achieve it. So if you include people, they'll do more, they'll work harder, they'll see themselves as part of the success of what America is. But currently, and what has been for a long time, is that a lot of people felt left out,
Yeah.
and so they didn't participate to the full extent, because it's not about me. it's I'm not included in what this is. But as inclusion continues to grow, we'll see a growth in esteem. We'll see a growth in inclusion. Even voting, people, inclusivity in the imagery of in the media surrounding voting definitely helps people feel like, okay, I'm a part of this. This isn't something for them. I'm a part of this. So I think it's the way forward, personally.
But one of the things when it comes to voting is also it's lesser two viewers across the board because, well, firstly, I'm not a I'm not a big proponent of federal government and federal intervention. I don't like what's being done. I don't like a lot of politicians, much if any. I just don't.
Fair, yeah.
But now, I want to steer the conversation to what the media companies are doing as a result of what's been going on. So, first of all, I want to just ask the flat out question. Do you think media companies, the establishment media, are they capable of creating an organic environment of DEI and the makeup of management, content creators, and production teams behind the scenes? Because my thing is, if they try, I also believe there's going to be a selective type of method where they're going to bring people on that can be manipulated. And, the people that are going to try to, the ones that are going to come in, if there are content creators, people that come into the management positions or join a production team, screenwriting or, whatever, writing crew, they might fight really hard to try to get their ideas, thoughts, and beliefs in it, but they're still overwhelmed by a majority that's not there. So, organic environment, what do you do? Do you need just to create a majority of more blacks and more projects, and that's what will overcome it? Or just like, what do you think is the answer?
Yeah, that is the answer. It's that. So, for instance, I have a friend that I'm not gonna say his name because he has a good job, but he is in the position where he can essentially give out jobs. He is a black person who was born into professional privilege, and so he inherited his parents, particularly his father's company, and so he's able to now employ people in the media space. But he is the only, aside from his partner in the business, the only black people, and so he still has to kind of appease the white people and can't really go all the way in doing what he wants to do and helping out black people because of the balance of the room. He's still outnumbered. And that pressure of there's an odd pressure put on I actually think this is any minority, but there's a pressure put on particularly black people where if you are put in a position of power and then you do things for black people, you're looked at as though you're cheating or that you're doing something nefarious. And so a lot of us will tend to, like you said, a lot of us will tend to become exactly like what the system has been. And some of us just become exhausted by the fight and just, assimilate all together. And I've seen that as well. And so,
but here's the thing. I do believe there's a lot of people that have seats on the table. But again, this is where my concern is. Sure, outnumbering to get the narrative that should be going out there. But I never felt like there was a point where content, that was made by those that have, power and influence that are black. I don't ever thought there was a lack of it, because if I could name off, movie directors, I could think of Steve McQueen, Ava DuVernay, Anton Fuqua. When I look at television, I can think of Courtney Kemp. I can think of, just lost for a second, Shonda Rhimes. And I just think to myself, there's a lot of power within some of these content creators now that are getting themselves out there. Yeah. Why does it, if the management stays out of the way, are there just, should it definitely be management? Should it definitely be all aspects of the company, of the corporation?
Well, yes. So let's use Ava DuVernay as an example. And this is the other thing too. I want to make sure that
Oh, and Jordan Peele. I meant to
all
mention
of
him
these
and the
people,
directors as well.
yes, so all of these people, again, are aberrations. Because if you look at it number wise, even those, say, 20 people you just named, there are 200 white ones I can name right now. You know what I mean? And again, that is the issue, that numbers thing. But
Well,
then
they shouldn't
also,
just be white, but
let's,
I also think they shouldn't just be black as well. I think we should have
I,
different ethnicities, different persuasions, all of that. I agree. I want a melting pot.
yes, I agree. And so this is the thing. If you want that to be the case, then you have to diversify those rooms in a way that's in a way in which the power is equitable. Because, for instance, Ava, although she is a director and she has certain powers, she's still under a white-owned company. So she still has to appease that white-owned company. The only real person that can literally do whatever they want is is um
Oprah Winfrey.
is no, not even Oprah. Oh my goodness, his name is escaping me. The gentleman that created Medea, he just opened his
Oh, Tyler
own.
Perry. Yeah.
Tyler Perry, yes, Tyler Perry is one of the only people with real power. He owns his own studio. He owns his own means of production. He owns everything. That
He was
is
also the
so
first one
he
to
has
actually get
100%
production
power.
studios back open after the pandemic, as a matter of fact, way before
There you
Hollywood.
go. There you go. So that's the thing. So he has that power, but everyone else is still in a room or under the thumb of a white person. That's still what it is. Because if you go to the top of the company, it is a white person at every single one of those companies. It is a white person, and so that is the issue. You have to have equity in these rooms in order for uh, equity in decision, in order for equity and opportunity, in order for equity in viewpoint, and vantage point. It's really the only way, because we've disagreed in this conversation because we are two different people. We're living two
Sure.
different lives. We look differently. We're different heights. We live in different states. We've grown up in different countries. We have different names. Therefore, we perceive the world differently. We move differently. And we're not going to agree. We've already disagreed on certain things in this conversation
That's
because
okay.
of that, right?
I prefer that we're not completely agreeing. It's okay. It's
Yeah.
a good,
Yes.
healthy debate.
Yes. I agree. And so that's the thing. In order for real conversations like this to happen,
Mhm.
as they're happening one-on-one, there has to be rooms where there are people open, and there are individuals like you and I that are open to hear each other and listen, and also back each other up in in our ideas. And in order for again, in order for that to be, the perspectives in the room have to be diverse to hit everything.
Recently, there was a video episode of Variety's rebooting the entertainment industry series. And this is what's being said in the room that we learn about. We don't know what everything's being said, but what they said us in public. This is what I have a
Mhm.
problem with. Now, Verna Myers, she's Netflix's vice president of inclusion strategy. She said this, quote, allyship has been one of the most helpful shifts in bringing about diversity, equity, and inclusion. When people get busy becoming an ally, they discover all sorts of powerful things and they become part of the solution. How do you take that
Yes.
statement?
I think that is absolutely true. They don't like. I'll be very real with you. One of the most untapped resources is the African American mind, the Black mind in the entire world. It is the most untapped resource because very little has been poured into it. But by pouring into it, you can create equity that didn't exist before due to the fact that you're taking your I guess your for lack of better words, I'm going to say exploitation, but because I can't think of the word.
Right.
But you're exploiting a resource you've never exploited before, and so you're going to bring about something that has never existed. There are so many fantastic ideas in our community that can't come out because again, we don't have the resources, we don't have the connections, we don't have the information to practically bring them about. But if you are inclusive and you and allies from communities are able to come to the Black community and say, hey, what do you all need? What capital do you all need? Who are your leaders, so that we can invest in them, so that they can invest in you all, in your community? That is absolutely the way to change. For instance, I myself, I am a leader in my community. I am someone that creates for my community. I not only created my opportunity, I am creating opportunity for my community through my work, through who I am, through conversations like this. And so if anyone wants to help our community, it's yeah, the allyship and really investing in our leaders and trying to find ones of us that are capable of taking advantage of the opportunities that are held by a lot of white-owned entities, companies, services, different things. And so I absolutely agree. Absolutely agree. And I can tell you from a business standpoint, it's the best thing any business can do. If you look in places you've never looked, you will find what you've never had. And that's what companies that are realizing the superpower that we possess. You know what I mean? Like, they're really
Well,
understanding it
it still
because
comes down to the idea is there's a glass ceiling, because I always believe when you talk about exploitation, I was thinking right away, I was thinking of the 70s and black exploitation films. So allowing certain black art, talent to go ahead and be in movies and to be noticed, but again, all controlled by the movie studios, predominantly white. But
yeah,
then, of course, we've seen progress going along, especially from the 80s to now. I think there's been a lot of progress made. I really do believe there is. But the problem is the ceiling is still there. It happens to women. It happens to ethnicities and other minorities altogether. Minorities all across the board are always going to get that glass ceiling, and it's hard
yeah,
to break and chip away at that. I think there's been some
yeah.
chipping away at that, but again, that's the biggest problem I see here. Now, I want to get back into this Rebooting the Industry series article. They mentioned this as well. Many of the panelists expressed the importance of considering intersectionality when bringing about change for the better. One of the people here identifies himself as Black, Asian American, and part of the LGBTQ plus community. He said it was important to support other groups toward their march for equality, rather than limiting the scope to just what personally affects those who look or identify like you do. Also went on to say, we, quote, as underrepresented communities feel like it's a zero-sum game at some points. We're fighting over one sliver of the pie, that we're not fighting over the whole pie. And I think this is a moment where we have to say there's a larger pie, and we are going to ask for that piece of that pie. So if for this moment Black Lives Matter is taking the priority, that will help lift all boats at some point. So we're doing this interview. We're 4 months after the George Floyd murder, and the Black Lives Matter movement having a really resurgence back to mainstream prominence, in a lot of coverage. Now, talk to me about the progress that you feel has been made as a result of this extended news cycle. This is where I came again, where if it's performative allyship, or are we actually seeing real progress? Maybe it hadn't happened in media entertainment, but do you see it where there has been progress made as a result?
I think some progress has been made. I think most of that progress has been in the minds of people, but I haven't seen a lot of tangible change, because the thing is that when you're talking about an issue as systemic as what we're talking about,
Yeah.
it's something that's going to realistically take, if it took hundreds of years to do, it's going to take hundreds of years to unravel. You know what I mean? It's not something that's going to change
But
overnight.
now
There are
I'm trying to
there
see what they've
are
actually
things
been
that are
doing,
hopeful.
right?
What we're actually doing. Well, what's actually happening is, so this is the information age. More people are becoming aware, and after awareness becomes action. So more people are becoming aware, and the action has been the protests. And so after protests will hopefully come change.
But
How
here's the
long that
question,
change will take?
Muyinza. Forgive me for jumping in.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
no, yeah, go
a
for it.
lot of money was being brought in. There was a lot of donations from all these
Yeah,
corporations to help contribute to the
mhm,
cause. Is
yeah,
that money even making it anywhere? Because that's what I always ask myself. Is like, is it only going to like political causes, or is it actually going into the communities that are underserved?
yeah, and that's kind of the issue as well, is that they're, yeah, yeah. So, and that's the other issue as well, is that a lot of these places, I'm sure, mean well. A lot of the organizations, I'm sure, mean well, and a lot of them do a lot to help. But it really shouldn't be on the people in those organizations to do it. It should be on the government. The government is supposed to look out for the citizens of the country. We as Black people are citizens. Why do we pay taxes and yet we're murdered 2.5% by the same individuals said to serve and protect us, but instead they're murdering us at 2.5 times the rate? And again, I pay taxes towards those people.
Right.
So, you know what I mean? So it's like there are certain things that just, you know, shouldn't be happening, but it's going to take time. It's going to take time.
Right.
And the government is really the one that should be footing the bill and doing something about it, because the people are just citizens. We're citizens. The government is supposed to
But
look
now the
out
new
for us
allies
at
that have
least.
been. But here's the thing, Windsor. Because of the new
Yeah,
allies that have been brought to light now,
yeah,
again, there's been some that has been very performative and has been stupid. One
yeah,
of the things that was the biggest example was Blackout Tuesday. Remember the Instagram icons, everybody going black. I
yeah,
don't understand what that did at all. I don't know if you participated in that because there was a lot of music artists that did.
yeah,
So they didn't take the room to message. Instead, they inadvertently shut themselves off from
yeah,
communicating at an important time.
right.
I
Yeah,
don't
I mean,
understand that.
there's when tragic things happen, people try to find ways uh to react and to show their pain and show their hurt, and that was a way. It was an attempt to bring awareness, and yes, it was, you know, you can say as far as the effectiveness, you can say what you want, you can say what you say about the effectiveness, sorry, of it.
Yeah.
But that was the point. The point was to bring attention to, hey, because I mean, you're talking about it, so it did kind of work. So
But I
you
just
know,
wish
it
they would
was
have
to
done
bring.
something with it. It's a missed opportunity.
You're talking about it, so I don't think it
Okay.
is a hundred
All right.
percent. But you know, if I would say that there is, and again, there just needs to be, you know, it's not on the people. You know what I mean? It's not on us. It's on, quite honestly, white people, and it's on the government, because
No.
that's what we can do. Blackout Tuesday is what we can do. That's the amount of power that we have. They have everything else. They have the real resources, they
Mhm.
have the real information, they have all of that stuff. Blackout Tuesday is what we can do. You know what I
No,
mean?
no.
And so,
Hey,
and that's the thing.
right. No, no.
No,
Listen.
that and that's the issue. Like literally, that's
Uh-huh.
the issue. Is that that's the power. That's the power dynamic. Is Blackout Tuesday is what we're capable of and what we can do.
I
And
really do appreciate you've been taking some heavy hitter questions. I have thrown some loaded questions at you, and
yeah,
I really appreciate where your take is on this. I really do, and I can say that it really does. It means a lot because obviously,
yeah,
like I said, your background, your experience, and what you've individually you've experienced. It means this conversation. I wish whole lot of people will get their ears on and realize where we're going with this here, because I think we're getting this is pushing the needle forward. I really do.
absolutely.
Now,
It's conversations like this that do, because we have to understand each other. We have to understand each other's perspective and just see where each other's coming from
yeah,
openly. If we can do that, we can have a little more empathy for each other and be able to find ways to help each other rather than just, you know, be against each other. We're all in this together. We're all in the same country. We're all in the same room.
Don't say we're on this together. That sounds like the pandemic advertising. I'm so tired of, man. Oh my God. Stay locked in. Zoom calls. No, that's it.
No, but think about it, right? Like real talk. Like this is a country, right? It's basically, and if you look at it, well, this is a house.
Mm-hmm.
This is a house. We're all in it, right? We can either hate each other, be mad all the time, treat each other like garbage, do all that stuff, or we could be like, hey man, make sure the living room's clean. Make sure you don't leave your stuff by the steps. Make sure you treat everybody with respect. Make sure you da-da-da. And we can have a happy home. You know what I mean? If we all are just understanding, deal with each other, like really hear each other out and try to do the best for each other.
I always think of it like it's a village. I always think of it like it's a village kind of mentality too. Where you just have everybody's trying to do their own responsible thing and, look after each other, which I wish it wasn't a perfect world that we can all go kumbaya, but unfortunately this is real life. It sucks.
Right.
Now back to this, rebooting the entertainment industry. Back to this one more thing in the series. I thought this article was really good. Recent years, they said, have seen sizable shifts in how companies view diversity. Having diverse staff used to be a token idea that very few organizations strove for, but executives are starting to realize it's no longer an option, but more of a requirement. So here's just to bring to your point about what should be done. Blair H. Taylor is a PwC or a PricewaterhouseCooper partner for people in organization and co-lead of diversity and inclusion. He said this, quote, I think there's an awakening and it's slow. It hasn't necessarily penetrated every company, but companies are awakening to the fact that we're living through a different era. And I think that's a very important distinction. What do you think about the fact that you when you hear something like that there is a slow awakening?
I think that is what's happening. And you can see it start to, because the way that it's dripping into, particularly media, is happening in a very drip fashion. I remember a few years ago, there was, this is on the media. I actually won't use that example because it's on the presentation side, but I think that, well, actually I will use that example. So Cheerios a few years ago released a commercial in which there was a biracial child and the husband was Black and the wife was white, and it made the news. And this was just a few years ago. This made the news. That's how big of a deal it was. And the thing is that might seem like nothing, but it goes along with what I said before. If you want people to feel like they're involved in what's happening, they have to see themselves. And people are now getting to the point where they don't want to support things that don't do that. Like they don't want to Uber people. I have so many friends that have dropped using many a service due to a company's political leanings or a statement that came out or something that leaked about what their diversity or their lack of diversity and things like that. People are caring about this, and now it's beginning to affect bottom lines. And I think the fact that it's beginning to affect bottom lines is the thing that is really gonna make companies hit the gas on it, because you're literally missing out on money. If you hire me and you have no Black people on your team, you're going to get a slew of ideas that your team has never had before. Because again, perspective dictates that I am coming from a completely different point of view than everyone else on the team. Thusly, my ideas are going to be a lot different. By the same token, if I'm also seeing myself in the media if I'm seeing myself in the media of a company, that makes me more apt to also support that company. Now, I think we're seeing the effects of kicking the can up out of the racial issues in this country, that being one.
One of the areas I don't see enough of, because obviously we've talked pretty much about the idea of where the representation that of diversity, equity, inclusion come in when it comes to music, movies, and television in the same light. Mm-hmm. I haven't been to talk about, and this is where I come from. When it comes to the injustices, I'm a radio guy. I worked, 25 years in radio, off and on. And, I always think about the fact that, there's always been some representation and a lot of ownership in radio in every major city in the country. A lot. And so there had to be a reason why certain artists were able to go ahead and make themselves prominent in every different market they were in. And it's very important. I just think that there's not enough being done, because if radio is in such a bad spot right now, because when you talk about yourself just before about how there's money being lost, there's money left on the table. Radio is the one place you can go with that. Terrestrial radio is in dire need of help. All these homogenized, corporatized stations are shit. I am tired of it. And why there's no diversity in radio, especially when it comes to black people in radio. Listen, I appreciate the Tom Joyners of the world and what they brought to the business. But again, it's something to be said about the people that come in here and they put in the work. You know the reason why they call him the fly jock? Because he literally, at one point, he used to fly from Chicago to Dallas on a private plane to go to both of his shows to do his show every day. That's the kind of work that guy put in. I respect the fuck out of Tom Joyner because he was great. And unfortunately, he's retired. But again, it's those kind of voices like that come on board. And it's like, there's not enough of that. And I still feel like, when it comes to black-owned radio stations, they program themselves so well. They're the most best performing stations in some markets. I mean, in Miami, Hot 105 has been a mainstay #1 station. And the people that have been there, they are community-based and focused. They let you know exactly what's going on, employment opportunities, things that are important to the community. They give a shit. I want more of that going on, is to come into radio. So one of the things I want to bring up, which is very important, I thought this day might be important for the people as they listen. Hopefully we'll catch this before it's too late. There's a coalition of public media workers. So public radio, National Public Radio. They're calling for a specific day, November 10th, to serve as a way to highlight the need to take action when it comes to diversity. The National Federation of Community Broadcasters said there have been too many public leaders defending systemic problems or reflecting criticism at those who complain, which is leading for the call to action. Ernesto Aguilar, program director for the NFCB, he says, quote, "It felt like time to say it's not just you, and remind those concerned about the need for public media's evolution. When it comes to messaging, why do you think radio isn't looked at more as a priority platform for diverse voices as has been for decades?" That's where I'm coming from, Muyinza.
That's interesting. Yes. Well, it's funny you say that. So the radio space is actually, we're now evolving into the podcast space. So I guess because I want, podcasting, absolutely, do a rampage in there, because there's a lot of black-owned podcasts that are on right now. But again, but the problem is that that's great podcasting. There's a lot of great talent there. Hell, that's what I follow along with anyway. I support the community. But what I want, I came from terrestrial radio first, and I have a love for radio because it was great. It's gone right now. So why isn't the money being put into these radio stations? Have them be local owned. Let there be more black owned stations and make it available, because those have as much or as more influence in communities than anything national. Yeah, I would say that is a sliding scale. So radio is dying a very slow death, as is TV, due to the fact that most people don't listen to the radio.
But you can. Do you realize the ratings?
You can, but they don't.
No, but hold on.
But they don't.
Do you realize how much of the black community does still listen to terrestrial radio? They do. It's still an audience. So tap into that. That's why I'm saying more stations. That's what I want.
Yes. So yes, so let's look at a company called iHeartMedia, right?
Yep.
So
I worked for them.
iHeartMedia. Okay, so there you go. So iHeartMedia a few years ago actually destroyed public radio, or local radio. So I used to live in Boston. In Boston, there was a show called Jammin' 94.5. It was like, what was the guy's name? Can't remember the guy's name, but it was two people hosting the morning show. And then one day I turned on the radio station, and it is a syndicated radio show from New York. And I say, this is weird. What happened? Turns out that iHeartMedia had gone on a purchasing spree to purchase a bunch of small local radio stations, a lot of them being Black and urban radio stations, in order to essentially house them under one big unit.
Oh, I see it. So it's Ramiro Torres and Sante de Oleo.
Yes, that was the one. Yes. So they and Robin, and there was another host, Robin,
right,
and Ashley, and so they next to that, whatever. And so this is the thing. I absolutely do agree. However, it's the same struggle. It's just we don't have the resources to go up against the iHeartMedia, to go up against some of these bigger broadcast companies that are white owned and but in their structure are mainly white. And so that is really why we've taken to the podcast space, because the podcast space is the space where we can actually have control. It's essentially new radio. We're very good at controlling culture. That's what we do. We're very good at running, creating, and making culture. And so in the podcast space, and if you look at people like Charlemagne the God, who just started his Black Effect podcast network, actually with partnering with iHeartMedia, he has a slew of Black podcasts ranging ranging from industries of politics, technology, just pop culture in general, news, just all of these Black voices that he's amplifying. So I do agree. Yes, I absolutely agree. And I think that revolution is already happening, but it's happening in not the radio space. I think the podcast space.
There was a time where, but there were a lot of stations, just going back a couple of years ago, they did plant flags and did establish prominent stations that had, that represented the best of Black stations in the iHeart brand. As a matter of fact, KMEL in San Francisco is a great example. Yeah. Chewy Gomez used to run the morning show there. Now it's Big Vaughn, still has a foothold, and they really do represent the community, even in such a corporate space. I also think of, well, at least it's a Cox-owned station for Hot 105, but them in 99 Jams, you have James T. and Jerry Russian have been running things down there for 3 decades or more. It's been crazy. And I think of the same thing for you talking about New York, Hot 97. Look, Charlemagne the God, or right now at Power 105, rather, running that Breakfast Club. That's prominent, and getting their own network with Revolt. Like, there's something to be said where, and this is where I come from as well. This is why I bring this up. All the great MCs, all the great voices from a lot of different spaces, you think about the fact that they all came from radio. Like Steve Harvey had a radio background. You look at, Tom Joyner, radio background. When you look at, I think at Don Cornelius, damn it, he was also entrenched into radio as well, getting themselves into the space. My thing is that radio catapults everything.
Yeah.
And that's what can be done here. There's a place to go, but radio, as in a corporate sense, needs to implode, and that's the one place we could wait for, because that's the vulnerable spot. You got iHeartRadio, even after bankruptcy, still $6 billion in debt. Cumulus, $1 billion in debt. Entercom, all these other companies. That's where the pressure should be put on. I don't know why the pressure's not there. Because because here's the thing. Then you have the pipeline to get everybody in.
Yes, but it's a resource game. It only comes down to a resource game. It's just when you're fighting that battle at that level.
But if you can break them up, you can do it. That's what I always think. And I think that can be done.
Or yes, you could do that. Or like you said earlier, you could make your own thing. And the podcast is the way for us to do that, because the radio is a system. So this is the way America works. America is a big white system. It was built that way, and it functions that way. And you can see according to how things work, right? So everything is made for white. So radio is a white institution. It is. We're in it, but it is a white institution. And so if by attempting to take over that, or to, I guess, change that, we're fighting against the white system. But with podcasts, because it's new, we're in a completely new space. It's essentially the same reason why I've been able to be successful, because what I entered into in the digital media, social media space, it wasn't a system yet. So I was able to thrive in a system that didn't have a color or a structure yet, because I was the structure. I was part of the base of it. And so that's what we're trying to do with podcasting. If we can come in early enough, we can control that thing of the future. I mean, we control streaming. We took over streaming. If you look at the top 50 in every country, it's all Black people. It's all Black artists. So
hold on. There's a lot of reggaeton artists that are up there as well. Don't knock them
yes,
out.
there are, and you know, Post Malone and Ariana Grande, they're up there too. But there are a lot of Black artists on there. And
actually,
so,
I wish there was more. I wish there was more converging as well. You know, like Cardi B working with J Balvin and Bad Bunny, or Travis Scott working with Rosalia. I love that kind of shit. I love the mixing, the blending of cultures. I don't want separate lanes. I want, like you said, diversity. It should converge.
Yes, it should converge, but we also need to.
Well, there's got to be lanes and the separate lanes, but there should be a mix of both.
Yeah, I agree. I think together we create more. Together we create more, but everybody has to have something in order to bring something, and just everybody needs more. That's it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'll tell you what, man. When I look at this whole time that we've had this discussion, not just today, but just since the death of George Floyd, the one thing I think that stands out that I think made the most significant difference for me was Little Baby's song, The Bigger Picture. Because there used to be protest songs, Edwin Starr, and just you'd have songs and music that would actually represent what happened and would actually almost give like a time capsule of what was happening at that time.
Yeah,
I want to just take a couple of lyrics from it, because here it is. It's bigger than black and white. It's a problem with the whole way of life. It can't change overnight, but we got to start somewhere. And I hope we've gotten the chance to. Might as well gonna head start here. I agree with that, and that's where we are.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, this is the way. It's these conversations, these tough, you know what I mean, butting of heads that we get to where we're trying to go.
Because, I mean, there's a thing about the pressure being put on, but then again, it's like people, overall, the overall society, they have to understand the message. And it's got to be, it's just like anything with mainstream society, you have to make it absorbable in a way that people can understand. But that's why I'm always saying that song right there will always let me know, okay, that's what it's all about. Probably one of the best ways I thought about how it came from. And, maybe we respect him as an artist that he actually would go. It wasn't even political, but just it was a message. And remember, I mean, with rap music, we used to have all political messaging. When you think about Chuck D, when you think about KRS-One, that's what we had. Diggable Planets, they all had that. Where did that go?
I mean, Grandmaster Flash.
Right. Where did that go?
Yeah, I would. The messaging, I would agree. I mean, who just put out? Who was it? Quality Control just put out a really, really great album of. No, it was Empire. Sorry, Empire just put out an album called Music of Change. That is, they got all of their artists and just had them put together records that can help us right now. Those same kind of empowerment records, and so they're out there. And our artists are doing the work. Definitely, for sure. It's out there.
And if those songs could get played on the radio, that's my point. I always feel like music is a pipeline to that always. Because again, in podcasting, you're stuck to the copyrights of what music you play. Gotcha. But radio, the music can get out to more people and hopefully build streaming and other things. So, I mean, for your own sake, for what you do at APRT Media, I hope radio would still be something that you can still try to use as a route. And, here's the other thing too, just because, artists like Leo the Kind, they don't need to be, pigeonholed into alternative. They could be on a station that might be urban, or that's still called urban contemporary, but it's really a black owned station. Like that should be the case. I want diversity in the music altogether. I don't want anybody to be stuck in a lane. And that's why I want the mainstream to represent everybody. That's where I come from. But anyway, before we wrap things up, you got a number of artists you're featuring on the website, aprtmedia.com. APRT Media. You have everything when it comes to photography, videography. Talk to people when they go to the website, what they can learn about more, and how they can follow you and what you're doing.
Yes. So if you are in the California, Nevada, or Arizona area and are in need of photography, videography services, we provide those. If you are international and necessitate marketing, um, as most of it is digital, we are definitely able of handling that. You can head to our website and reach out to us there. You can also reach out to me personally at just Instagram at Muyinza, just my name, Muyinza. You can also follow us on Instagram, Apart Media, APRT Media, just like that. Please also, if you are anyone that has any ability, all the way up from the CEO of a company that is considering where you're going to order your next pen supply, or if you are just a normal person just going to get food at a restaurant, please take a few extra minutes and try to find a Black owned business, service provider, food service, anything. It would help out our community immensely. Support our leaders, because our leaders will help our community. Helping our community is what will help the country. So that is what I would say.
And also, I want to make mention too. I saw the section on the studio, the songwriting and production section on the website.
Yes.
I love how you put the equipment out there and you have everything set, and you're offering all that there. Because honestly, like, there should be some people that are now. Is this something where when you're booking calls, do you have the capability to do virtual, or I mean, can you like take voices and get them recorded and sent to you to produce?
Yeah, we do actually. It's funny you say that. So we do a lot of virtual sessions actually. So we do songwriting production virtually. We can get things done. Luckily, the internet is a beautiful thing. So most songs actually don't happen in the same room anymore. So
Well, I've
we're
seen that.
very
Yeah.
capable.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. So by the same token, yes, that as well. We're able to get done what you need to get done from a production, writing, songwriting, recording standpoint, if you necessitate any of those services as well.
As a matter of fact, in the UK, and that's the other thing too. I got to make mention of this too,
Yes.
because when you talk about the music being produced by so many different routes, there's a song called "Times Like These" during about the pandemic that was done by BBC Radio One and the Live Lounge All Stars. So all these different artists came together and collaborated. And so it's like 30 voices that all recorded their own pieces, whether iPhone or whatever they did, to put the song together. Amazing. It was the number one song over there. The other thing too is that, why is it the UK gets it? Like, if I look over there, you ever listen to what the UK's got when it comes to the grime artists, the Stormzy's, the heady ones, the Dutchavellis, the dance music that they have, it's everything. It's such
much more diverse.
A kaleidoscope. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
I love listening to what they're doing over there, and the music gets up there when it's viral. Like, you hear it on the radio, and it's a government-owned station, and they're doing it right. Why can't we get NPR to do that? Damn it.
That's a good question. Hey, that's a good question. It's a very good question.
They get it, man. Other countries get it. I bet you Uganda got it.
I mean, even to be honest, even Canada.
Yeah.
Radio in Canada I love radio in Canada. When I go to Toronto, I love listening to radio because you get everything.
Yeah.
You get such a crazy mix of everything. But yeah, I actually would agree with that. Musical diversity in other countries is definitely a lot more extreme than here.
It's just America. It's just America's America.
It's sectored. Yeah, it's a young country.
Yeah, that's true. It's true.
If you really think about it, America's a teenager. We have bad credit, in debt. You know what I mean? It's just young. It's a young person, doesn't know what's going on. It's kind of, has a gun pointed at everybody. It's young. It takes time.
Muyinza, we went about 90 minutes, man. I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for being on, and I'm really glad we got to go and talk through this out. I thought we put a lot of stuff out there for people to chew on.
I think so too, and I appreciate you giving me your platform for the few minutes.
Again, I've been here with Black media producer, artist, entrepreneur, and owner of APRT Media, and that's aprtmedia.com. Muyinza Kasirye. Thanks for being on, man.
Awesome, thank you, appreciate it.
And that is a wrap.